Can you be a good mom while you're still healing your trauma? Most moms secretly believe that you can't. They think if I don't fix myself completely, I'm going to mess up my kids. They assume motherhood and healing are two separate jobs, and you can't do one well until you've mastered the other. Healing while mothering isn't a problem. It's the very thing that breaks generational trauma. And I know this because I've lived it. I've spent years terrified that my unhealed wounds would become my child's blueprint. But then I learned something that flipped my entire approach to parenting. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the exact process I used to stop parenting from my triggers, start reparenting my inner child, and finally feel like a grounded, safe mom instead of a constantly overstimulated one. So let's dive in. I was convinced my unhealed parts would cast a shadow over the bright, beautiful life of my son. But what I discovered on a journey I never expected to take was that the key to showing up for him was actually healing the little girl who still lives inside of me. And that journey changed the whole family dynamic. I have these moments seared into my memory. My toddler would have a perfectly normal tantrum, a big, messy explosion of feelings. And instead of feeling like a calm, capable adult, I'd feel a surge of panic. My whole system would go into overdrive, and I'd react with fixing that felt uncomfortably familiar. It sounded just like my own mother. I didn't realize at the time that I wasn't just reacting to my child's tantrum, but I was reacting from a place of past trauma. This is the reality for so many mothers parenting while healing. These emotional injuries and unhealthy ways of coping get passed down, often without anyone ever realizing it. It isn't always about big catastrophic events or big T trauma. It's growing up in a home where emotions were seen as an inconvenience, where love felt conditional, or where you had to be perfect to earn approval. These experiences get wired into our nervous systems. We learn to swallow our own needs, to people please, or to build walls around our hearts just to protect ourselves. Then we become mothers. And motherhood, in all its beautiful and brutal glory, holds up a mirror to every single one of our unhealed wounds. We are haunted by the fear that we're failing, that we're not just bad moms, but that we're actively damaging our children. And this fear creates a vicious cycle of guilt and perfectionism. We're so afraid of repeating the mistakes of the past that we hold ourselves to an impossible standard. And when we inevitably fall short, because we're human, the self-loathing that follows is immense. So many of us suffer in silence, convinced we're the only ones who feel this broken. The turning point for me wasn't some lightning bolt moment, but more of a slow, quiet realization. It started with a question I stumbled upon during a late night reading session from Happy Days by Gabby Bernstein, and stumbled upon a question that said, "What does your inner child need right now?" I actually paused. The answer that came back was so quiet and simple, it nearly took my breath away. I could hear her whisper, "I just need to know that I'm safe." In that instant, my entire perspective shifted. I realized I had been treating the wounded little girl inside me the exact same way I've been treated as a child, with criticism, impatience, and a relentless demand for perfection. I was trying to be a gentle, loving mother to my child while being a harsh, unforgiving critic to myself. And this is the very heart of what it means to heal the mother wound. It's understanding that the pain we carry often comes from our own mother's unmet needs and her own unhealed trauma. So you can't outrun your past. And I definitely couldn't hate myself into being a better mother. The only way forward was to turn toward the pain. The path to becoming the mother my child deserved was through reparenting myself. I had to give that little girl inside me all the things she never got: unconditional love, safety, compassion, and the permission to be messy and imperfect. Every time I learned to be more compassionate with myself, I had more compassion for my son. Every time I set a boundary to protect my own energy, I was modeling healthy relationships for him. And in that process, I was actively breaking a cycle of generational trauma that had been in my family for decades. Once I understood that the healing was the key, the next question was how? The idea of healing your inner child can feel pretty abstract, especially when you're just trying to survive the day. The journey really starts with a few core ideas. The first, and maybe the most important, is embracing radical self-compassion. For those of us with trauma histories, our inner critic is often loud and vicious. We are so much harder on ourselves than anyone else could ever be. Self-compassion is the antidote. It's not about letting yourself off the hook. It's about treating yourself with the same kindness you'd give a dear friend who is also struggling. The second step is to build your support system. Trauma tells us this insidious lie that we are totally alone in our struggle. Healing isn't meant to be a solo mission. For you, this can look like a lot of different things. Finding a trauma-informed therapist is an incredible resource. Some people find that certain approaches like EMDR can be really effective for helping the brain reprocess traumatic memories and dial down their emotional intensity, making you less reactive to parenting triggers. But support isn't just professional. It's about finding your people. This could be the support group inside of the Regulated Mom membership. It could be a few trusted friends you can be truly vulnerable with. The key is to break the isolation. You're not the only one, and speaking your truth in a safe space is profoundly healing. The third pillar is simply acknowledging the trauma and letting yourself grieve. So many of us were taught to minimize our own pain. We tell ourselves it wasn't that bad, or other people have it worse than us. But to heal a wound, you first have to admit that you're hurting. You have to give yourself permission to grieve what you lost. Grieve the childhood you didn't get. Grieve the loving, supportive parent you needed but didn't have. And this process can bring up a lot of intense emotions: anger, sadness, resentment. The instinct is to push them away. But healing requires us to actually feel them. Look, this work is not easy, but it is the most important work you will ever do. It's the foundation for building a new legacy for your family. And I want to create a space for that right here. This journey you can feel so isolating, but it doesn't have to be. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What's been the hardest part of this journey for you? Building that foundation of self-compassion and support is everything. From there, we can start weaving practical everyday habits into our lives that actively reparent that wounded part of ourselves. It's about infusing your existing life with small, tangible, intentional acts of self-care and respect. A powerful and practical strategy is setting boundaries to protect your peace. For many of us who grew up in chaotic or traumatic homes, we never learned how to say no. We learned that our needs didn't matter, so we became people pleasers. People pleasers were once parent pleasers, and we did this to survive. As mothers, this is a direct path to burnout. Boundaries are not selfish. They're a vital form of self-respect. It might mean saying no to things that drain your energy. It might be telling your partner, I need an hour to myself uninterrupted. It might even mean letting go of the pressure to have a perfectly clean house. I know. Setting boundaries protects your limited energy, which is essential for preventing the overwhelm that so often leads to reactive parenting. It teaches your children a huge lesson. It's okay to have needs and to protect your own well-being. Next, focus on small, intentional daily practices. When you're an overwhelmed mom, the idea of a massive life overhaul is just laughable. Making some grand plan for 2 hours of yoga, meditation, every day, just not feasible. So what's one tiny thing that you can do for yourself today? It could be taking 5 deep breaths before you even get out of bed. It could be a 2-minute mindfulness practice where you just notice the feeling of warm water on your hands as you do the dishes. Maybe it's just journaling for a few minutes before you sleep, asking, what did my inner child need to hear today? Or maybe it's just stepping outside for 60 seconds to get some fresh air and feel the sun on your skin. And I get it. These small acts might seem insignificant, but they are powerful messages to your nervous system. Finally, and this one is so important, it's about reconnecting with your identity outside of motherhood. Motherhood is a profound transformation. I was not ready for it. I lost my identity. And I think that's really tied to postpartum depression in moms. There is a complete loss of self. We can get so consumed by our role as a mom and our identity as a survivor that we forget all other parts of who we are. It is so important to reconnect with things that brought you joy before you became a parent. What did you love to do? Was it painting, dancing, hiking, reading novels, playing an instrument? Pursuing passions and creative outlets are not luxuries. They are essential for your mental health. They reconnect you to a part of yourself that is whole and untouched by trauma. Fill your cup up first before you pour into others. As I started to actually do these things, something slowly began to shift. The constant state of high alert I lived in began to soften. The reactive moments didn't vanish overnight, but they became less frequent. And when they did happen, the shame spiral was a lot less. I learned to practice what I now call the art of repair. After losing my cool, once I calmed down, I'd go to my son and I'd say, I'm so sorry I raised my voice. Mommy is having really big feelings right now, and it wasn't your fault. I love you. I realized that being a good mom wasn't about being a perfect mom who never makes mistakes. It was about being a real mom who knew how to apologize and then reconnect. In modeling repair, I'm also teaching my son one of the most valuable lessons of all, that relationships can withstand conflict, that mistakes are forgivable, and that no one has to be perfect to be worthy of love. I let go of the Pinterest perfect mother, and I'm embracing a new vision of just being a conscious, present parent. And that means that she isn't perfect, but they're aware. Children who watch their mothers navigate struggles with honesty and courage learn that seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness. And they see what it looks like to take care of your own mental health. This is how we break the cycle of generational trauma. It's not about erasing the past. It's about creating a new future. So can you be a good mom while healing your trauma? The answer is a resounding, unequivocal yes. In fact, your healing journey doesn't get in the way of being a good mom. It's what makes you a great one.